Please help me to reach 1,000 subscribers. I never imagined a piece of paper could cause more tension than any argument, but apparently, it could. My name's Elena, I'm 29 and my fiancé Mark and I had been together for 5 years, planning a life we thought was bulletproof. We were supposed to be that couple everyone envied. The easy laughs, the inside jokes, the late-night adventures that felt like they'd never end. I thought we had it all figured out. Or at least I thought I did. Then came the conversation that changed everything. It wasn't during a romantic dinner or a quiet night at home. It was over brunch at his parents' house, the kind of sunny, perfectly staged mornings that always seem harmless until they aren't. His mother, Diane, her voice calm but firm, asked the question that made my stomach tighten. Have you considered a prenup? I froze for a second, half smiling, trying to laugh it off. A prenup? I said, letting my eyebrows lift in mock disbelief. We're not exactly Hollywood, Mom. But Diane wasn't joking. She slid a thick folder across the table toward me, full of legal jargon and fine print. Mark's family insists, she said, and we think it's better to be clear from the start. Mark didn't look at me, not really. His eyes were on his coffee cup, but I could see the tension in his jaw. It's fine, Elena, he muttered softly, almost too soft. But I knew him well enough to know that when he said nothing, it meant something. I spent the rest of the afternoon reading the prenup, feeling like every word was a blade against the trust and love we'd built over the years. Everything seemed standard at first, assets, debts, property rights, but then I realized I had an opportunity. Not to play games exactly, but to assert something crucial. Something they didn't expect. By the time Mark and I were alone in our apartment that evening, I had made my decision. I was calm, deliberate, and yes, a little mischievous. Mark, I started, sitting across from him at the kitchen table, I've gone over the prenup. I think we can both sign it, but I added a clause you'll notice. His eyebrows shot up. Clause? He echoed, wary but curious. What kind of clause? I smiled faintly, keeping my tone light, almost casual. One that makes it clear that if either of us ever tries to use it as a tool against the other, to create control, resentment, or leverage, it automatically nullifies that part. In other words, it protects both of us from being manipulative. Mark stared at me, blinking. Wait, so you basically outsmarted them? I shrugged, leaning back. I prefer to think of it as protecting the love we actually have, not the hypothetical version that someone else imagines. He laughed quietly, but I could see the tension in his shoulders start to loosen. I should have known, he said, shaking his head. You always find a way to turn things around without making it a fight. The next morning, we went to Diane's house to review the document with the lawyer. I expected resistance, sharp eyes, pointed questions, but instead I watched them read the clause in silence. Diane's lips pressed together, her expression unreadable, while Mark's father, Paul, finally gave a small nod, almost imperceptible. Interesting, Diane said finally, flipping the page back and forth. I didn't expect this. I kept my smile polite, warm even. It's just to make sure we're all clear about intentions. Nothing more. The lawyer raised an eyebrow, then chuckled softly. It's uncommon, but it's clear. Enforceable and fair to both parties. It prevents misuse while keeping the spirit of the agreement intact. I felt a quiet surge of triumph, not malicious but justified. We had taken control of a situation designed to make us wary, defensive, and maybe even resentful. Instead, we had a clause that forced respect, accountability, and clarity. Later that evening, as Mark and I walked through the city streets, the sunlight fading behind the skyscrapers, he took my hand, squeezing it lightly. I can't believe you did that, he murmured. Did what? I asked, smiling at him. This. You turned a potential conflict into something ours. Something smart. I looked at him, feeling a rush of warmth and relief. I didn't want to start a fight, I said. I just wanted to make sure we weren't setting ourselves up for one. He nodded, resting his forehead briefly against mine. You always have a way of making the hard things simple, elegant even. That night, we celebrated quietly, just the two of us, savoring the kind of victory that isn't about proving anyone wrong, but about protecting what actually matters. But even as we laughed over takeout and old movies, a small part of me knew that this prenup, this simple piece of paper with a single unexpected clause, would be the story we'd tell one day. Not as a cautionary tale of control or manipulation, but as a story of respect, strategy, and foresight, of two people committed not just to each other, but to fairness, trust, and the quiet strength that comes from knowing you're standing on equal ground. And the truth is, it felt good. It felt powerful. It felt like we had outsmarted fear without ever compromising love. Little did we know Diane's expression during that meeting would linger in our minds for weeks, a mixture of surprise, calculation, and perhaps begrudging respect. It reminded us both that sometimes, the best victories are invisible, quiet, and completely unexpected.